Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. In a society full of narcissists who gaslight people, I can't emphasize enough the difference between a fair and just and righteous match and government intervention. Okay, what they've done utterly disgraces them and everyone who follows them and everyone who doesn't obey God through me. There's no other way to look at it. Well, first let's consider the bigger picture. The government admits to setting me up for a car accident when I was around 17 years old or so, and covert and involuntary drugging and experimentation since I was a child. They've admitted this stuff. They tried to use, the streets gangsters. They tried to use various people they planted in my life, what have you, and they just really played themselves out. They showed this appalling inability to look at the timeline and correct their mistakes. Okay, so one of the people who was in the vehicle when Tupac was shot, as the story goes, was named Keith D. And he explained that, he had to defend his honor as a gang member when people were insulting him publicly and treating him like a dog, he said, and so on and so forth. So they must have known that the logical response from a whole bunch of different types of people is that they're going to try to defend themselves, right, from the accusations, what have you. And when you're dealing with a brain-searching son who's the most romantic son, who's the top martial artist ever, what have you, he's going to win that exchange. So they've done things over the years to try to downplay that effect, throwing me little bones here and there, what have you. Okay. But what they did was dumber than hell, and it doesn't allow for any decent life after my flesh dies. It doesn't allow for any decent family or offspring for people, because the principles that would allow for them, okay, they cannot be attained. So over the course of this, there was a sort of cultural tug of war at play, right? The Jewish, the English, the LGBT community, okay, the police, the intelligence apparatus, the military, academics, Freemasons, corporate people, political groups, the prison industrial complex, and feminists, and on and on and on, right? And they're all trying to kind of get people to think their way and to not live in reality. And obviously it's very dumb. And during the course of this, because the governing class is full of these types, and token minorities, they wanted to kind of do things in a way that they thought would favor them. And it's really ridiculous. As you look at the world today, it is different from the 90s, but in some ways it's not that different. It's distinctly different, but it's not that much different. There was really no one to impress in the 90s and anywhere on the planet. When Los Angeles, San Jose, New York, London, you name it. Okay, nobody was really worth impressing. That's what I call the Barney Rubble effect, right? The Flintstones, the George Jetson effect, the Scary Movie effect. Okay, the Purge movie. I mean, who are you trying to impress? Some gold digger, from Hollywood or otherwise? Some frat person, some jock, some skater, some emo, some spoiled rich brat? I mean, who are they trying to? I'm the only one really worth impressing. And only obeying God through me masterfully is going to impress me. Okay, and of course I wanted to, make my family proud, so my parents and I. But my scale is the only one really precise, as they kind of, they don't say the things I do, they don't do the things I do. That's very key here, because as we look at the timeline, all right, as we look at the truth of the matter, right, Isaiah 28:17 says that hail will sweep away their refuge, the lie, right? They should have made righteousness and justice their measuring line. Their scale, their plume line, as they say. But they didn't. Proverbs says the Lord detests dishonest scales. Okay, they should have used the right scales, because over time, they're going to regret it. I believe Proverbs also says, when you forsake correction and instruction, not in these words, it says, at the end of your life, you will groan. How you hated correction and instruction. Okay, and it was a mistake. And what correction and instruction? From a criminal? From an arrogant rich person, from a Jewish, LGBT, or some kind of other racial supremacist or illogical supremacist? And that's why I put the picture on the screen. Proverbs 28:10, whoever leads the upright along an evil path will fall into their own trap, but the blameless will receive a good inheritance. These people bet like everything their souls and everything against the fact that 1 + 1 = 2 in basic arithmetic, so to speak. I mean, they are way out of their minds. Way off. They shouldn't be leading anyone, teaching anyone, none of that. Not martial arts, not religion, not arithmetic in school. They are far too irresponsible and reckless and senseless and dull. Their hearts are far too callous and insensitive. Folly and simple and wicked thinking is their master. They invested everything in just harassing me, because the true test in life for their groups is, what do you do when the Messiah comes back? That's when it really comes to a head. Okay, you should have been doing the right thing the whole time, but the really essence of the true test is, what do you do in this period of time on behalf of yourself, your families, and your ancestors? And they sought to try to discredit. They sought to try to make it so I look bad, and then do little things and say, well, the careful observer knows that you came out on top. Well, lovely, but that's not honoring God. You don't crucify Christ and say, well, we were just exalting him like our script says. I don't approve of the script. Before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I am. Before all the authors of the Bible, I am. John the Revelator, who wrote Revelation, as the story goes. So as they sought to kind of do bitch-ass shit, as they sought to lead me on the wrong path, and I kept telling them, no, and I kept not following them for better, we look back at the timeline, and we see that bitch-ass shit, that senseless, old fool-made nonsense that they did. That kind of social club stupidity. That secret society-like just cowardice. As they sought to kind of try to portray me in certain ways. Can you imagine being so stupid? Having a culture that's so bad, being bred so wrong, being raised so wrong, that you think the answer is to try to make the Son of God look bad. And you send people who are just your servants to try to do so. Just gang members, just police officers, just, who are they? A little kid should be able to tell you. And I've said things like this many times, and there's no viable counter-argument. They were said a long time ago, that all the opinions that ever were compared to mine mean nothing. My opinion is greater. My truths are greater. The absolute truth. My verdict. There's nothing you could do. I could be babbling on and on and on, and every once in a while say something true, and it would still be a greater speech than all of your speeches put together. It would be authoritative utterance while you're just living falsehood, spitting devil nonsense. What the devil spew? It's what you speak. From out of your contorted and wicked hearts comes your stupid plans. And as you sought to try to plant people in my life, you sought to lead me along an evil path, you fell into your own trap and you don't even see it. And as you're sitting there waiting for the hunter to come for your soul, yes, I will receive a good inheritance. I can't imagine what your ancestors were thinking, what your parents and grandparents were thinking. I don't understand you people to some degree. I do understand you're headed for hell and you've damned your offspring. And every day you had the chance to call an emergency meeting and call this thing off, but you couldn't do it because you're some kind of predators, child molesters, or you're teamed up with them, or both. You're some kind of out-of-touch, crazy old fools. And the fools that follow them. Just poorly raised. Type of son of a bitch who would try to silence me right now because you don't know how to be a man. You don't know how to take a punishment like a man. You don't know how to accept God's verdict like a man. So now look what you've done to yourselves and your offspring. So one of the hardest things to believe is that people were bred so poorly that they think that zapping my brain and telling me not to raise my voice, or, hacking my phone like some kind of immature nerd that never grew up, I mean, we'd expect more from like a 13-year-old hacker, right? We see people who graduated college, people in the military, people in the contractor groups, people who are in social clubs, what have you. it is astounding to see that they're that immature. But as you look at popular culture, you look at all the immature behavior that you see, I think that it's very believable, and it's obviously true. You know, that's one of those things that I think that, you know, time will overkill as you see the behavior from the celebrities, their followers, the fraternities. You think about how people emulate the movies like The Purge and Scary Movie and American Pie, and if you really think about it, and you think about how they act like the Joker and, you know, the Riddler and Harley Quinn, that you'll really start to see that, yeah, people aren't just immature enough to be occultists, but they're immature enough to be like the most immature occultists you can imagine, and to try to act bad while they do so. That's the legacy they left on behalf of themselves and their families. And one of the things that, you know, perhaps is even harder to believe than that, is that these people reproduce. I mean, you think they would just, you know, they're female, get their tubes tied immediately, they'd take one look at the world, tubes tied. You think that they're this crazy nerd that can help but be immature, this crazy, arrogant European rich person or whoever, that they would just immediately, you know, make sure their girlfriends or wives had their tubes tied. Like, they wouldn't be stupid enough to reproduce that extreme failure and that utter disgrace, you know. Imagine you're a frat guy trying to act bad, you know, or someone in the military, just another dime a dozen soldier trying to act bad to the top martial artist ever possible. Imagine you're a general or something, and you say to yourself you're going to assert authority over Jesus and try to cause him to stumble on his words, you know. And you're going to serve, you know, these immature rich people, and it says one nation under God. If you're not ready to leave the military on the drop of a hat, rather than persecuting the most righteous person ever lived, you're not really a soldier. You're just some kind of child playing soldier with a uniform or whatever. I mean, I think a little kid should be able to tell you that. If you ask a little kid that, say, hey, if someone isn't ready to leave a corrupt military on the drop of a hat, rather than persecute the most righteous person ever, when they technically have the right to not follow an order that is clearly against international law, clearly violates people's human rights, then they're not a man, they're not a soldier. Certainly not a warrior, certainly not a martial artist. They have so much growing up to do, there's no words for it. So it's extremely difficult for people, perhaps, if they were, you know, separated from society to the extreme or something, to like understand that. So I think that 100% of the viewers will believe me. They know that I'm the most reliable person ever lived. They'll believe it, no problem. But to understand it is something else. I mean, it takes such a stupid fuck, just a dumb fuck, just a waste of life, just unbelievable idiot. You know, Gomer's pile, as they say in European culture, just a foolish, trashy, no matter how rich they are, trashy, weird, goofy, just unbelievably childish coward to persecute the most righteous person ever. And on top of that, when there's not even a significant threat to their governance. I mean, the stupidity will never be matched. They're in a pit of sheer fucking stupidity with a dunce cap on, and no matter how much their wife pretends they enjoy having sex in the bed, they know they're a bitch. You can't miss that if you try. No matter how much their friends try to humor them, they know they're a bitch. No matter how much their family, they know they're a bitch. They get on TV, that's a bitch-ass motherfucker. There's no missing that. No way. I'd love to meet someone who missed that, you know, and direct them to some kind of intensive care unit or something because they're clearly in a fucking coma or something, out of their minds.